The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the breakfast table. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of pancakes sizzling on the stove. I stood at the counter, flipping the pancakes while keeping an eye on my two kids, Ethan and Lily, who were engaged in a spirited debate over the merits of superheroes. "Spider-Man is way cooler than Batman," Ethan exclaimed, his eyes wide with enthusiasm as he animatedly gestured with a fork. "Yeah, but Batman has gadgets," Lily countered, crossing her arms defiantly. Her pigtails bobbed as she leaned forward, her expression a mixture of determination and playful challenge. I couldn't help but chuckle at their banter. Moments like these were the heartbeats of our family life, simple yet profound. I felt a swell of gratitude for these little moments, especially on a Saturday when the world outside seemed to fade away, and it was just us. All right, let's settle this over breakfast," I said, placing a plate stacked high with pancakes in front of them. "First, fuel up, and then you can continue your debate." As they dug in, I took a moment to savor the sight, Lily's face lighting up with each bite, Ethan's animated gestures as he tried to convince his sister. I felt a sense of normalcy wash over me, a comforting rhythm that I had come to cherish. It was on days like this that I could almost forget the weight of adult worries, bills, work deadlines, and the subtle changes I had noticed in Jess lately. After breakfast, we transitioned to our next family activity, planning our day. I pulled out a large piece of paper and some markers, and we began brainstorming ideas. "What do you want to do today?" I asked, leaning over the table, the kids' excitement palpable. "I want to go to the zoo," Lily shouted, her eyes shining with eagerness. "Yeah, and we can see the lions," Ethan added, bouncing in his seat. I smiled, loving their enthusiasm. "The zoo it is. We can pack a picnic and make a day of it. How about we go to the park afterward?" The kids cheered in response, their arguments about superheroes quickly forgotten as they shifted gears into the excitement of the day ahead. I felt a twinge of happiness. This was what family meant to me: laughter, love, and little adventures. As I gathered our picnic supplies, I glanced at the clock. Jess was supposed to be home by now. I sent her a quick text, asking if she'd be joining us at the zoo. The response came quickly: "Running a bit late. Be home soon." I brushed off a slight pang of disappointment. She often got caught up at work, and I understood that. After all, balancing career and family wasn't easy, especially when she was striving for that promotion. I was proud of her ambition, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in our dynamic. Shaking off my concerns, I focused on the kids. "All right, team, let's get our things ready for the zoo." We gathered snacks, sandwiches, and drinks, packing everything into a colorful cooler. The kids buzzed around the living room, grabbing their favorite toys and hats, adding to our already bulging bags. As I watched them, I couldn't help but feel a deep love for my family. These moments were precious, and I wanted to hold on to them tightly. Little did I know, the day would unravel in ways I could never have imagined, and the normalcy I cherished was about to be shattered. But for now, I was content, surrounded by the laughter of my children and the warmth of a family day ahead. "Let's get ready, superheroes," I called out, trying to instill a sense of adventure. "The zoo awaits." And with that, we stepped into the bright day, blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing just around the corner. The week that followed our perfect Saturday lingered in my mind like an unsettling fog. It began with small, seemingly insignificant changes in Jessica's behavior that I initially brushed off. But as days passed, those changes began to weave a tapestry of doubt and concern that I couldn't ignore. Monday morning arrived with the usual bustle of getting the kids ready for school. I made breakfast while Jessica rushed around the house, her focus sharp but distant. She barely touched her coffee and forgot to grab her lunch. "I'll just grab something at work," she said, her voice hurried as she adjusted her blazer and rushed out the door. As the week progressed, I noticed a pattern. Jessica would leave earlier than usual, often taking calls that she quickly hung up when I walked into the room. Her phone buzzed incessantly, but she never offered to share who was messaging her. I told myself that it was probably work-related. After all, she had been pushing hard for that promotion, and the pressure must have been mounting. But then came the late nights. On Tuesday, she texted me just before dinner to say she'd be working late on a project. I made a simple meal for the kids and tried to keep the atmosphere light, but Ethan and Lily sensed the absence of their mother and asked where she was. I brushed off their questions with assurances that she was busy but would be home soon. Wednesday was more of the same. Jessica didn't come home until nearly 10, and when she did, she was visibly exhausted. She barely spoke as she ate a few bites of leftover pasta and then shuffled off to bed without so much as a good night kiss for the kids. By Thursday, the unease gnawed at me like a relentless itch. I tried to engage her in conversation, to draw her out from the shadows of her thoughts. "How was your day?" I asked as we sat on the couch after the kids had gone to bed. She looked up from her phone, her expression unreadable. "Busy. Just the usual stuff," she replied, her voice flat. It was then that I felt the distance between us, like a chasm that had opened without warning. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back, but something held her captive. She kept her gaze on her phone, tapping away, and the familiar warmth I had always felt around her was replaced by a cold silence. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I replayed our conversations in my mind, searching for clues, trying to decipher what was happening to the woman I loved. She had always been my confidant, my partner in everything, and now it felt as if she was slipping away, drowning in her world while I stood helpless on the shore. Friday came, and I decided to take the kids out for ice cream to lift our spirits. As we sat at the parlor, I noticed a couple sitting at the table next to us. The man looked strikingly familiar, and as I strained to see his face, it hit me: Alex, her high school friend. The realization sent a chill down my spine. I watched as they laughed together, sharing inside jokes, and my heart raced. A thought I had been trying to suppress bubbled to the surface, igniting a spark of suspicion. I didn't want to believe it, but how well did I know Jessica anymore? Was this laughter something more? That night, as I lay in bed next to her, I couldn't sleep. I studied her face in the dim light, searching for answers. She was peaceful, her features soft and relaxed, but the gap between us felt insurmountable. It was a disheartening contrast to the chaos swirling in my mind. I resolved to keep an eye on her, to pay closer attention to her words and actions. Something wasn't right, and I needed to uncover the truth. The warning signs were there, flashing like neon lights in the back of my mind, and I was determined to unravel the mystery that had begun to unfold around us. Little did I know, the week's events were merely the prelude to a revelation that would change everything. It was a warm Friday afternoon when I decided to take the long way home after picking up the kids from school. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over everything, and the chatter of children playing filled the air. It was a picturesque day, one that normally would have lifted my spirits. But as I drove, the gnawing doubts about Jessica continued to weigh heavily on my mind. With Ethan and Lily settled in the back seat, their laughter and playful banter a comforting soundtrack, I felt an inexplicable urge to take a detour through the local park. It had always been one of our favorite family spots, filled with memories of picnics and laughter. Perhaps a little nostalgia would brighten my mood, I thought. As I pulled into the park parking lot, I noticed a cluster of families enjoying the day. Children ran around, couples strolled hand in hand, and the aroma of food wafted through the air from a nearby vendor. I parked the car and glanced back at the kids, who were now animatedly discussing the merits of a nearby playground. "Let's go check it out," I suggested, hoping to join in their excitement. We made our way through the park, and as we approached a small clearing, I suddenly froze. My heart sank as I saw them, Jessica and Alex, standing together under the shade of an old oak tree. They were laughing, their faces lit with joy, and the sight sent a wave of nausea crashing over me. I squinted, hoping my eyes were deceiving me, but there they were, unmistakably close, wrapped in an embrace that felt far too intimate for mere friends. Time seemed to slow as I watched them. My pulse quickened, and a mixture of disbelief and anger surged within me. This couldn't be happening. My mind raced, conjuring every moment of doubt from the past week. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the distance between us, it all flooded back, now tinged with painful clarity. I stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling as if the ground had been pulled from beneath me. My heart was pounding in my chest, each beat echoing the weight of betrayal. How could she do this? My mind screamed at me, demanding answers I didn't want to confront. I felt like an outsider peering through a window into a world that no longer included me. Ethan and Lily, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing inside me, were still chattering about the playground, their voices innocent and carefree. I struggled to regain my composure. to mask the storm of emotions threatening to consume me. I took a deep breath, desperate to steady myself, but the image of Jessica in Alex's arms seared into my mind like a brand. As I continued to watch them, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The laughter they shared felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. This was more than a fleeting moment, this was a connection I had thought was reserved for us. I couldn't bear to witness anymore. I felt a rush of anger and bitterness, overwhelming my thoughts and drowning out the laughter of my children. Without thinking, I turned away, unwilling to confront them. I couldn't allow them to see me like this, exposed and vulnerable. I quickly ushered the kids back to the car, my heart heavy with anguish I had never known. Every step felt like a betrayal of its own, as if I were leaving a part of myself behind in that park, one that had been naive and blissfully unaware of the cracks forming in my marriage. Once we were in the car, I closed the door and took a moment to collect myself. The kids were excitedly discussing their playground plans, but I felt like I was in a different world, one shrouded in darkness and despair. I managed a weak smile, forcing myself to engage with them, but inside, I was a whirlwind of anger and heartache. As I drove away, the laughter of my children echoed in the background, but all I could think about was the betrayal I had just witnessed. The reality of my situation loomed large, heavy, and oppressive. I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The truth was clear, my world was unraveling, and I was left to pick up the pieces. The drive home felt interminable. I navigated through familiar streets, but everything around me seemed foreign. The laughter of my children faded into the background, drowned out by the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I was furious, hurt, and betrayed. I couldn't shake the image of Jessica and Alex from my mind, it replayed like a broken record, taunting me at every turn. Once home, I walked through the door, the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. I forced a smile for Ethan and Lily, who rushed past me, their innocence a stark contrast to the chaos within. I needed to process what I had seen, and I knew the best way to do that was to confront Alex. I had to hear it from him. Was this an emotional affair, a fling, or something even deeper? That night, after putting the kids to bed, I paced the living room, the tension in my muscles coiling tighter with each step. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Jessica, but I ignored them, refusing to engage. Instead, I pulled up Alex's contact information and stared at it, my heart racing. I knew I had to be cautious. This confrontation could easily spiral out of control, and I had to be strategic. I had heard enough stories about confrontations gone wrong, where emotions ran high and reason flew out the window. I needed to approach this with a level head, even if my heart screamed for revenge. I decided to meet him in a neutral location, a small cafe not far from where I lived. The idea of sitting across from him, knowing what I did, filled me with a mix of dread and determination. I imagined the look on his face when I laid everything out, the undeniable evidence of his betrayal hanging in the air like a dark cloud. The next morning, I woke up early, my mind racing with thoughts of what I wanted to say. I took a long shower, trying to calm my nerves. Each drop of water felt like a moment to gather my thoughts. I dressed carefully, wanting to look composed yet intimidating. I chose a dark shirt and jeans, wanting to project strength. As I made my way to the cafe, my heart pounded in my chest. I replayed the conversation in my mind over and over, anticipating his reactions. Would he deny everything? Would he try to minimize what had happened? The unknown weighed heavily on me. When I arrived at the cafe, I chose a table in the corner, ensuring I had a clear view of the entrance. I ordered a black coffee, my hands trembling slightly as I wrapped them around the warm mug. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, heightening my senses. This wasn't just a conversation, this was a reckoning. Minutes felt like hours as I waited, scanning the faces of every newcomer, searching for Alex. When he finally walked in, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. He looked relaxed, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath the surface. I watched as he scanned the room, and when his eyes landed on me, a flicker of confusion crossed his face. I gestured for him to come over, and as he approached, I stood up, feeling a surge of anger. "Thanks for coming, Alex," I said, my voice steady but laced with tension. "Ryan, hey, what's going on?" he asked, feigning nonchalance. He took a seat across from me, and I could see the glimmer of apprehension in his eyes as he sensed the weight of the moment. I leaned in, keeping my gaze locked on his. "I know about you and Jessica. I saw you two together in the park. You're not just friends anymore, are you? The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. For a moment, he looked stunned, as if the air had been knocked out of him. What are you talking about? He stammered, his bravado slipping away. I saw you hugging her, laughing with her like she was the only person in the world, I shot back, my voice rising slightly. Don't play dumb with me, Alex. I want the truth. He opened his mouth to respond, but I could see the gears turning in his head. I wanted to push him further, to rattle him, to make him squirm. What's going on between you two? You need to come clean. His expression shifted, the cockiness fading. Look, it's not what you think. Jess and I were just catching up. Catching up? I interrupted, my anger boiling over. You don't hug someone like that if it's just to catch up. I don't need to hear your excuses. I want to know how deep this goes. Alex shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. I swear, it's not like that. We're just old friends. Friends don't behave like that. I shot back, my voice low and intense. You have to understand how this looks. She's my wife, and I deserve to know the truth. Did you cross that line? He hesitated, his eyes darting around the cafe as if searching for an escape. We're just talking, Ryan. It's not what you think. Jess is. Jess is what? I pressed, my voice a low growl. What do you think I'm going to believe? That she's just a friend? You both know it's more than that. The tension in the air thickened as I leaned forward, my anger palpable. I was ready to make him pay for the pain he had caused, and I was determined to get the answers I needed. This was just the beginning of a confrontation that would ultimately lead to a reckoning neither of us could have anticipated. The tension in the cafe was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. I leaned back in my chair, my heart racing, preparing for the storm I knew was coming. As I glared at Alex, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I was about to take control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. Just then, the door swung open, and in walked Jessica. She looked radiant, completely unaware of the chaos that awaited her. The sun caught her hair, illuminating her in a way that made my heart ache, a stark reminder of what I was fighting for and against. As she approached our table, I could see the confusion in her eyes when she spotted me sitting across from Alex. Ryan, what's going on? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Jessica, I said, my tone steely as I motioned for her to take a seat. We need to talk. She hesitated but ultimately sat down, glancing between me and Alex, sensing the tension in the air. What's going on? She repeated, her voice quieter now. Everything, I said, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I saw you with Alex in the park. The way you were laughing and hugging, was that just friendly? Or was there something more? Her expression shifted, and I could see the color drain from her face. Ryan, No, I interrupted, cutting her off. I want to hear the truth. I have something to show you. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I navigated to the messages I had captured. I had screenshots of her texts to Alex, ones that dripped with intimacy and familiarity. Look at this, I said, holding the phone out for her to see. You think this is just a friendship? You call him, babe, and talk about missing him? Tell me how this is just a casual catch-up. Her eyes widened as she read the messages, and I could see the realization wash over her. She opened her mouth to protest, but I wasn't finished yet. I shifted my gaze to Alex, who was now visibly sweating under the pressure. And you dare to sit here and pretend you didn't know how this would hurt me? You were supposed to be a friend, Alex. I swear, it wasn't like that. He pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. We were just talking, catching up on old times. Catching up? I scoffed, feeling the fury rise within me again. You're both playing with fire, and I'm done being the fool. This isn't just some harmless reunion. This is betrayal. Jessica looked between us, panic etched on her face. Ryan, please, let's talk about this. I cut her off again, fueled by the anger bubbling inside me. Talk? What is there to talk about? You've already made your choices. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to feel pity. The hurt and betrayal I felt eclipsed everything else. You both have a choice to make, either own up to what you've done or live with the lies. In a moment of defiance, I decided to take this confrontation public. I had come too far to back down now. I pulled up the photos I had taken in the park, the damning evidence of their embrace, and without hesitation, I began to upload them to social media. The anxiety surged within me, but it was outweighed by a sense of empowerment. I typed a brief caption: "This is what betrayal looks like." My wife and her friend caught in the act. I hit the post and watched as the notifications began to flood in, the screen lighting up with comments and reactions. "What are you doing?" Jessica cried, her voice rising in panic as she reached for my phone. Exposing the truth, I replied coldly, feeling a rush of satisfaction as I saw the disbelief on Alex's face. "This isn't just between us anymore. The world deserves to know what you both have done." I could see the weight of my actions settle over them. Especially Jessica. Her face turned pale as she realized the implications of what I had just done. "You can't do this," she shouted, her voice cracking. "You're destroying everything. Everything was destroyed the moment you chose to betray me," I shot back, feeling the finality of my words hang in the air. The realization of the fracture in our lives felt tangible and heavy. At that moment, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sorrow. I had exposed the truth, but at what cost? As the comments continued to roll in on my phone, I watched as Jessica and Alex exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of shock and fear. The air was thick with tension, and I knew this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey ahead. I stood up, my resolve hardening. "You can sort this out between you two, but I'm done. I'm done being the victim in your twisted game." I turned to leave, the weight of the situation crashing down on me. As I walked away, I could hear the murmurs of other patrons in the cafe, their eyes glued to the unfolding drama. I felt a sense of liberation wash over me, but it was bittersweet. The fight for my family was far from over, and I had just lit the fuse on a confrontation that would forever change the course of our lives. The ride home felt surreal, a whirlwind of emotions crashing over me like waves on a stormy sea. I had just unleashed a torrent of truth, a calculated revenge that I had envisioned in my mind for so long. But as I drove through the familiar streets, the exhilaration I had expected was replaced with an unsettling emptiness. The images of Jessica and Alex lingered in my thoughts, a haunting reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. I had fought back, yes, but at what cost? The satisfaction of exposing their deception was fleeting, swallowed by a deeper pain that gnawed at me. I glanced at my phone, the notifications still rolling in from my post, friends, family, even strangers commenting, reacting, speculating. It felt surreal to witness my personal life become a spectacle for others to scrutinize. I had wanted justice, but now it felt like I had turned my life into a circus. As I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a moment, gathering my thoughts. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a shadow over my home, and the reality of what had just happened settled heavily on my chest. I felt a mixture of anger and heartbreak, a cocktail of emotions that left me feeling more lost than before. When I finally stepped inside, the house felt eerily quiet. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of the kids' laughter from the other room. A stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I paused at the doorway, watching Ethan and Lily play with their toys, their innocence a painful reminder of everything I was fighting for. I wanted to be present for them, but the weight of betrayal hung like a shroud over my heart. "Dad," Lily called out, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Can we have ice cream?" I forced a smile, but it felt strained, like a mask I was wearing to hide my true feelings. "Sure, sweetheart," I replied, moving toward the kitchen, my heart aching as I tried to push the turmoil aside for their sake. As I scooped the ice cream into bowls, one couldn't shake the feeling of discontent. I had achieved a form of revenge, but the relief I had hoped for eluded me. The satisfaction that came with exposing Jessica and Alex felt shallow. Instead of clarity, I was left with confusion and pain, drowning in a sea of emotions I didn't know how to navigate. After the kids were tucked into bed, I sat in the dim light of the living room, reflecting on the events of the day. I had crossed a line I never thought I would, and while I had felt justified in my actions, I couldn't escape the growing sense of emptiness within me. I had lashed out, but deep down, I knew that this wasn't the solution. I needed to do more than just retaliate, I needed to find a way to heal. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in a whirlwind of activity, trying to avoid the emotional storm brewing inside. I threw myself into work, staying late to distract myself from the chaos at home. But no matter how much I tried to bury my feelings, they crept back in, gnawing at my resolve. Then one evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon an ad for a personal development workshop. The tagline caught my eye: "Find your strength, reclaim your life." Something in me stirred. I realized that rather than focusing on revenge, I needed to focus on myself, on rebuilding the parts of me that felt shattered. The next day, I signed up for the workshop. It felt like a small step, but it was a step toward reclaiming my life. I needed to grow, to rediscover who I was outside of the anger and betrayal that had consumed me. It was time to shift my focus from revenge to personal growth. As the weeks passed, I committed to the workshop and began to explore self-development in earnest. The sessions challenged me in ways I hadn't expected. I learned about emotional intelligence, resilience, and the importance of setting boundaries. I began to reflect on my behaviors and choices, realizing that I had allowed myself to be swept away by anger instead of taking the time to understand my feelings. In addition to my growth journey, I made a conscious effort to spend more quality time with Ethan and Lily. We started going on weekend outings, hiking, biking, and visiting the local zoo. I cherished every moment with them, and in those moments, I felt a sense of joy I hadn't experienced in a long time. I became more present, focusing on their laughter, their curiosity, and their love. Our relationship began to flourish in ways I hadn't anticipated. I found myself listening more, engaging in their conversations, and truly enjoying the simplicity of our time together. It felt liberating to step away from the weight of betrayal and just be their dad again, to foster their growth and happiness. As I navigated this new path of self-improvement, I realized that healing was a process. The emotional storm had not vanished entirely, but I was beginning to learn how to manage it. The anger and betrayal still lingered in the background, but they no longer defined me. Instead, I was carving out a new identity, one rooted in resilience and growth. With each passing day, I felt stronger and more grounded. I knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but I was ready to embrace the journey. It was time to reclaim my life, for myself and my children, and to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose. It was a Saturday morning, bright and crisp, with sunlight streaming through the windows and filling our home with warmth. The kids were bustling about, their laughter echoing through the halls as they played games, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a sense of normalcy wash over me. Yet, beneath that surface, I knew I had to confront the reality of our situation. I had been holding onto my feelings, and it was time to open up to Ethan and Lily about what was happening, even if it was difficult. I gathered them in the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. I had thought a lot about this moment. I wanted to approach it delicately, mindful of their young hearts. They were still processing their feelings, and I didn't want to hurt them further by casting blame. I took a deep breath and smiled at them, trying to mask the turmoil within. "Hey, kiddos," I said, settling onto the couch and patting the space beside me. "Can you come over here for a minute? I want to talk to you about something important." Ethan and Lily exchanged curious glances before climbing onto the couch beside me. Their eyes were bright and innocent, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt for what I was about to discuss. But I reminded myself that honesty was essential, especially in rebuilding our family's foundation. "What's up, Dad?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with youthful enthusiasm. I loved that about him. He approached life with a sense of adventure that I admired. I took another deep breath, carefully choosing my words. "You know how sometimes things happen in life that we don't expect? Sometimes, even people we love can make choices that hurt us." I could see the confusion in their eyes, and I continued, "I want to share something with you both, but I want you to know that this isn't your fault. It's something that's been happening between me and Mom." Lily tilted her head, her brow furrowed. "Is it about Mom? Is she okay?" I nodded slowly, trying to find the right way to explain without overwhelming them. "Your mom and I have been going through some tough times lately. I found out that she was spending time with someone else, and it made me sad and angry. But I don't want you to think badly of her. She's still your mom, and I love her, even if things are complicated right now." The room fell silent as they processed my words. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, and I hoped I had chosen my words wisely. Ethan was the first to speak, his voice small. "Dad, does that mean you and Mom aren't going to be together anymore?" I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "I don't know yet, buddy. We're trying to figure things out. It's a process, and it's okay to feel confused or sad about it. I want you both to know that whatever happens, I'm always going to be here for you. You can talk to me about anything, anytime." Lily's eyes welled up with tears, and I reached out to pull her close. "I don't want Mom to be sad," she whispered, her voice trembling. I love her. I know, sweetheart, I replied gently, wiping a tear from her cheek. And we all love her. This is hard for everyone, but it's important to remember that love can look different sometimes. It doesn't mean that we care any less. Ethan looked contemplative, his expression serious. Do you still love her, Dad? He asked, his eyes searching mine. That's a good question, I admitted. Love is complicated. I care about your mom deeply, but I'm also hurt by what's happened. It's okay to feel a mix of things. We're all human, and we have feelings that change over time. The conversation shifted as I continued to reassure them, encouraging them to express their feelings. I wanted them to know that it was okay to feel confused or upset. I encouraged them to talk about their emotions and how the situation affected them. We shared laughter and tears as we navigated this difficult conversation, but it felt liberating to be honest with them. After a while, I shifted the conversation to focus on our family dynamic. No matter what happens, we're still a family, I emphasized. And I want us to stick together through this. You two are my top priority, and I'm committed to being the best dad I can be. We can still create happy memories, even when things are tough. Ethan smiled at me, his youthful optimism shining through. Can we still go to the zoo next weekend? He asked, eager to hold on to the normalcy we had built. Absolutely, I replied, a sense of relief washing over me. We'll make a day of it, just like old times. And I want to hear your ideas for fun things we can do together. As we continued talking, I could see the tension begin to ease between us. We began to share stories, play games, and even laugh, finding comfort in our bond. I felt a renewed sense of hope, realizing that while our family was navigating turbulent waters, we were still strong together. The conversation was only the beginning, but I knew that being open and honest with my children was crucial. I wanted to empower them to process their feelings while reinforcing that our love for one another would endure, no matter what challenges lay ahead. At that moment, I felt a shift within myself as well, a commitment to not only face the challenges with Jessica but also to embrace this new chapter of our lives with courage and resilience. As the autumn leaves began to fall, swirling around the yard in vibrant hues of red and gold, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The decision I had been dreading for so long had finally crystallized in my mind. I was ready to leave Jessica. It was a choice born out of a mix of sadness and relief, a recognition that our relationship had shifted beyond repair. Yet, even at that moment, I felt a flicker of hope, a chance to build something new. I had spent weeks reflecting on everything that had transpired. And while the pain of betrayal lingered, I realized that my focus needed to shift from what I was losing to what I could gain. I had a responsibility not just to myself but to Ethan and Lily. I wanted to create a home filled with love, understanding, and growth, despite the challenges that lay ahead. The decision to leave Jessica was not made lightly. We had shared so much, years of memories, dreams, and hopes. But those dreams had been tainted, and I knew that remaining together out of obligation would only lead to more resentment. I wanted to model healthy relationships for my children, showing them that it was okay to prioritize one's well-being, even when it was difficult. I started by having a heartfelt conversation with Jessica. I approached it with empathy, understanding that this was as hard for her as it was for me. Jessica, I began, choosing my words carefully, I think it's time for us to accept that our relationship has changed. We can still be co-parents and support each other for the kids' sake, but I believe it's healthier for us to live separately. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and sadness. Ryan, I never meant to hurt you. I thought we could work things out. I know you didn't, and I appreciate that, I replied softly. But we've both changed, and I think it's best for all of us if we focus on being the best parents we can be. The conversation was emotionally charged, but it ended on a note of understanding. We agreed to prioritize our children, ensuring that they felt loved and supported. The next few weeks were filled with logistical discussions about co-parenting, shared schedules, and how we would break the news to Ethan and Lily about the changes in our living situation. Once we reached a mutual agreement, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was time to embrace my new life, one that centered around my children and my personal growth. I was determined to create a nurturing environment for Ethan and Lily, a space where they could thrive and feel secure. I set new routines, carving out dedicated time for us to connect. Our weekends transformed into adventures, hiking, biking, and visiting museums. I encouraged the kids to express their thoughts and feelings about the changes, and I listened intently, ensuring they knew their voices mattered. In addition to nurturing my relationship with them, I dug deeper into my personal development journey. I started attending more workshops and engaging in activities that fueled my passions. I rediscovered hobbies I had long neglected: painting, writing, and even cooking. Each brushstroke, word, and meal became a form of therapy. A way for me to process my emotions and channel my energy into something positive. As the months rolled on, I found comfort in my new routines. I had transformed the spare bedroom into a cozy office space where I could reflect, plan, and create. I filled the walls with motivational quotes, pictures of my kids, and reminders of the goals I set for myself. This was my sanctuary, a place where I could envision the future I wanted for us. There were tough days, of course. Days when memories of Jessica would hit me like a tidal wave, reminding me of what I had lost. But each time I felt overwhelmed, I would look at Ethan and Lily, playing, laughing, and simply being kids. They were my motivation, my driving force to keep moving forward. I also sought support from friends and family, sharing my journey and allowing them to help me navigate the emotional landscape of being a single dad. Their encouragement and understanding played a vital role in my healing process, reminding me that I was not alone in this transition. As winter approached, I could feel the transformation within me. I was not the man I had been a year ago. I had grown stronger and more resilient. The pain of betrayal had shifted into a lesson, teaching me the importance of self-worth, boundaries, and the power of love in various forms. One evening, as I tucked Ethan and Lily into bed, I looked at them and felt a sense of fulfillment wash over me. "I love you both so much," I whispered, brushing a stray hair from Lily's forehead. "I love you too, Dad," Ethan replied, a sleepy smile spreading across his face. At that moment, I realized that while my life had taken an unexpected turn, I had created something beautiful out of the ashes of my former relationship. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but I felt hopeful, knowing that I had the strength to face whatever came my way. As I closed the door to their room, I took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the love we shared enveloping me like a comforting blanket. I was ready to embrace this new chapter, one filled with the promise of growth, love, and connection. My life was beginning anew, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace.